Hey, I'm Molly Sims.
And I'm Emese Gormley. We're two girls obsessed with one thing, beauty.
And by that, we mean everything that makes you look
And feel
beautiful.
We're calling on our favorite health experts, industry insiders, and friends to answer all your beauty questions.
With a drink in hand.
Definitely with a drink in hand.
You're listening to Lipstick on the Rim with Molly Sims.
Well. This is just a PSA for our parents at home. Don't let your children listen to this episode.
Unless you want them to get very good advice on how to win an argument.
No, just kidding. This episode is for everyone who's ever wanted to stop dreading hard conversations, whether it's your partner, your boss, your husband, your best friend, or your teenager. Our guest today is going to teach you how to argue less, talk more, and never lose yourself in the process. You guys, we are so excited to have Texas-based board-certified attorney who's anything but your typical trial lawyer. We have none other than Jefferson Fisher. In 2022, Jefferson made an unexpected pivot, sharing short, practical videos on how to communicate better, drawing from his experience in the high-stakes world of litigation. With no background in social media, his actionable advice struck a chord, sparking a global movement. He is one of the most trusted voices in communication. He has over 10 million followers and more than 500 million video views. His debut book, The Next Conversation, just came out. He also has the #1 podcast on communication called the Jefferson Fisher Podcast. You guys, he's going to teach us how to fucking argue. We're gonna win. He's going to teach us how to argue with empathy, stand our ground without starting a war, speak up for ourselves while still considering the feelings of others.
Molly does not like to argue.
I love to argue. I wanted to be a trial attorney growing up. I wanted to be a defense attorney. I love anything. I was telling you before we started the podcast, a friend of mine who's a producer a year ago said, do you know this guy, Jefferson Fisher? And I was like, no, Jefferson. He teaches you how to argue. And I'm like, what? Anyway, we're so happy a year later. You've had huge success. Before we dive in for our juicy communication tips, okay, full-time trial attorney.
That's right.
By day.
By day.
By night, you are a social media global phenomenon, basically teaching kids, parents, everyone in between how to communicate. I mean, how did this even happen?
And you have
two
podcast.
Kids. You're from Texas. What is happening?
Yeah, I asked that same question. What is happening?
What was the turning point?
I'm still in it, I feel like. So a few years ago, I was starting my own law firm after leaving being a partner at another big defense firm. And I thought, well, I'll start social media. So I Googled, how do you make a reel? And that's exactly what I did. And I began to think, okay, what do I want to share in the world? What do I want to be my legacy? If I'm not here, what do I want to teach my kids? Because I think so many people post things on social media without understanding your grandkids. Mm-hmm. Your great-grandkids are going to see this. And I thought, well, what's one thing I can teach them that I know? And it's how to communicate, how to handle arguments, how to diffuse conflict. What I do every day when I train and teach every one of my clients and prepare them for depositions and trials and cross-examination. And so I got out my phone in my car. At the time, I didn't have an office because I just left my firm. And I just thought, this will have to do. So I decided to do 1, 2, 3, how to argue like a lawyer. And that was it.
That is insane. And this was only 2 years ago.
That was about 2 years ago.
And do you remember what post it was where you were like, holy shit, people are watching this?
Well, even the first post was, I only had maybe around 800 friends on Instagram that were friends from college and law school. And I remember thinking, I had a friend of mine who was an attorney and he had like 1,200 followers. And I was like, wow, I can't imagine having 1,200 followers. And I just thought that was a really big deal. And so when I first posted my How to Argue Like a Lawyer series, I didn't know what I was doing. And then I had other people that I didn't know comment on it, and other people I didn't know like message me and say, this is great, or share my stuff. Like I remember it was a very real moment for me that's a stranger is commenting on my content. I never had that before. And I just said, okay, I'll make another one, and then I'll make another one. And it wasn't like I was posting every day. This was like once every 2 weeks. I didn't know what I was doing.
So you hadn't quit your day job?
No, not even close.
Two or 3 weeks.
Yeah, not even close. And by How to Argue Like a Lawyer Part 4, which I talked about how to not get defensive, how to not take things personally, and how that when you cuss too much in conversation, it's like over seasoning your food, like your message gets lost. And it went viral. And so I went from 800 friends to immediately 100,000 friends. And then it just continued to grow. And then I'd make more videos and people would say, well, what about this? What about that? And so I'd give them my advice. And I Googled what's a call to action. They said, you need to have that. And so that's how I ended my video with try that and follow me. Cause I thought I got to tell them what I want them to do. And so that was it. Simple as that.
Incredible. Okay. Before we go into everything, what makes you a good trial attorney?
What makes good trial attorneys from bad trial attorneys is that you don't focus on your next question. You're focusing on what the person is saying. And interviewers understand this. You're listening to somebody, but at the same time, you start thinking of your next question, and you might look down at your notes, or you might try and you have to feel like you have to say something a certain way. The good trial attorneys are always listening because somebody's giving you something that's good information. You're just not willing to adjust. And so you have to be very adaptable in conversation. Second of all would be, because you have a juror, you have a jury, set of 12, you have a judge, a bailiff, a court reporter, opposing attorneys, you got people in the back that are watching. How you respond in communication says more about what is actually said. So if a witness is saying something bad for your case, or a judge makes a ruling against you on something, and you look like you're mad, or you're upset about it, or you're flustered, there's 12 people who are going to think, oh, that must be bad for his case, or that's bad information, or he's trying to hide something. Why wouldn't you want me to know that? So it's really, you're watching your whole presence in conversation. You're
basically being an actor.
In theater, the theater of the courtroom is very real, for sure. But what separates the good and the bad is authenticity. I've seen people, there's a guy that I know who, he's not a big guy at all. He's not the fanciest, slick attorney you think in a courtroom. It's not like on movies. And he'll get in front of the jury and he gets really nervous. And the first thing out of his mouth is he'll say, ladies and gentlemen, I just need to let you know, I do get very nervous in front of speaking in front of other people, but it's not going to keep me from representing my client. And every one of those jurors, their heart just explodes and they go, so I don't care about your case. I like you. No, it's real. That's exactly who he is. He is, would you say somebody's more introverted? He's not big. He's not grandiose. He's not ego. But he is more effective than somebody who is flashy suit, Rolex, I got so much money. They will always lose to him because they will trust the authenticity more.
So what does it take to ruffle your feathers?
My feathers?
Can your feathers get ruffled?
It's really hard to ruffle my feathers.
Your wife, I would try all day long. I would be poking that bear, trying to see what I
imagine. But there is an art to communicating. There is an art to arguing. There is an art, which I think has become the phenomenon of you and what you're speaking about. And you have a 3-part framework, right? Say it with control, say it with confidence, say it to connect.
That's right.
And why is that order so important?
That order is important because it begins with what you can control first, and that is yourself. So often in conversation, the first thing we want to do is control them. We're looking for what can control you. Now, you're not saying what I want you to say. You're not responding how I want you to respond. No, what you should say is X, Y, and Z. And when you set out that way to control the other person, you're losing the most important moment and regaining your composure in conversation, and that is controlling yourself. So that's why rule number 1 is all about controlling yourself. 2 goes into the confidence, meaning that you can't get it across unless you have the assertive voice to say what you need to say, to be confident in it. And then when it comes to the difficult conversations, rule number 3 is you're saying it to connect, meaning you're having understanding, you're having acknowledgement, and that's going to build connection and build a better relationship. But it's a framework that if the conversation's not going well, most likely one of those 3 are missing. Maybe you're not saying it with control because you're yelling, or maybe you're not saying it to connect because you're caring more about what you're saying. Yeah.
I yell, Jefferson. I don't mean to yell, but I get all...
You don't realize you're yelling. In your defense, you don't realize you're yelling.
I get all fiery.
Nothing wrong with that.
I mean...
It's natural. That's the point. It's natural.
You know what it is? I get invested, right? I get invested in people, or I get invested in things. Like, I really put my heart, my soul, like I get invested, and then I just like lose all my boundaries. Like I lose, like say it with control. Right. I never say it with control. I never say it. Do I ever say it with control? My team's over there. I don't. Yeah. I don't. They work for me.
Would people say you're passionate? Is that what you would call it?
What, Rosie, would you say I'm passionate? I'm very passionate. But I'm passionate about everything. Right. Like I'm a passionate person. Like I'm not, I don't know. You're passionate too, but you're in a different way. She's much calmer.
Got it. That would mean you're dynamic in conversation. I mean, your highs really high and your lows are really low. There's typically
don't you think?
There's typically no middle.
Yeah, I don't really have gray. I don't have a middle. Like, yeah. But then I'm trying because I started a company. So I'm really, like, I'm trying. And like, I had to fire someone the other day. And normally I'm the one who does it with, HR or somebody because I feel bad or I feel guilty and it was the first time where I couldn't do it because I was so upset about having to do it. Like I literally couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. And so I took myself out of it, which I never do. And I ended up speaking to the person like 4 days later, and it was the best thing I ever did.
There's nothing wrong with taking time. I think there's this stigma that when you're in conversation, you have to have this immediate response. Just because they said something or just because they have an opinion, then you are automatically required to also have an opinion. And in fact, you have to share that opinion now.
I think when you're on the receiving end too, it's sort of, I listened to a podcast episode with Mel Robbins and you were on it. And sometimes it's like you realize that when people are arguing with you, or if you're having an argument with your husband or whatever, a lot of the times it actually has nothing to do with the recipient, right? Yeah. Like it doesn't have anything to do with me. Right. And I think that what this episode you guys were talking about was, goes back to the whole let them theory that Mel has. But you have to sort of, I think it's one thing to know how to argue and have all of that, but there's another side of it, which is to know how to receive the argument.
Right.
And I think that's equally important, right? Yeah. Because your reaction can then trigger something further. So it's kind of like sparring a little bit and knowing in both ways what your defense should be to an offense, right?
Yeah. And we have the tendency to take things as a challenge. Any little thing. Maybe it's an opinion you don't like, or maybe you see something differently than the other person. You want them to accept your way of seeing it rather than theirs.
Which is winning.
Exactly.
Which is winning, because a lot of us were raised to think that winning the argument was the goal, right?
Oh yeah, there's still books and blogs and
everything.
You
say the opposite though. What is the real what the mindset that can be dangerous is that.
Yeah,
so what do we aim for?
Instead of seeing arguments as something to win, I want you to see them as something to unravel. Meaning you think of them as a knot. So anytime, let's say there's a straight line between me and you, something's going to happen, or there's a snag. Like there's, I'm taking something the wrong way. There's some kind of miscommunication, and a knot starts to form. What we want to do typically is say, no, you see it my way. And then you go, no, see it my way. And what it does is just makes that knot harder and harder to undo.
You talk about calm power and how you can be assertive without being aggressive, right?
Yeah, but how do you do that?
How do you, I guess, grasp that if it's not in your nature typically?
Well, I want to make this distinction. It's like, for example, you're saying you yell all the time.
I don't yell all the time.
Did you hear that? Yeah. So
Did you hear the yell? And I don't yell all the time.
Yeah, that was, you see how fast that was? That was just like a viper type of like snap. If you're somebody who tends to yell often and sometimes, then you always stay at a 9. And when things are bad, it's really hard to show the difference between what's important and what's not that important. So if you're always yelling, nobody knows what really matters and what doesn't really matter. Right. And so when you are trying to, let's say, stand your ground in an argument, but you're somebody who always yells, they're not going to know the difference between, is this just something that's a small little issue or a big little issue? So if you are going to yell, save it for the times that people are really going to
The boy
listen.
who cried wolf.
The boy who cried wolf.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And the whole thing about winning, if you set out to win an argument, you will lose the relationship. If you were friends that someone always had to be right, then you're not going to have that great of a friendship.
Yeah.
We all know people that they can't ever let something go. They always have to be the one that everybody has to go with what they want. Like you've been in those groups. It can be a group of guys, group of women. It doesn't matter. There's somebody who says, no, we want to go to this restaurant. And if we don't go to that restaurant, everybody's done.
Yeah.
If we don't go to this activity on the bachelor party, everybody's
Or
done.
it's like we have friends who it's only like that's how they see it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And
because it's become part of their identity.
that's not how any of us see it. Right. But it's totally fine that they see it this way, but we don't, you're like, I think it's hard when people can't let things go. Like I might get crazy and passionate, but I let it go.
Right.
Right. Like it's hard when people hang on for like dear life over something. And it's like,
is that the hill you're going to die on?
Is that the hill you're going to die on?
Yeah. Then definitely down in Texas, we would say, don't make that your Alamo.
Yeah.
So is that really going to be the part where you put your flag in the ground and say, I'm not moving?
Is there a tactic you have to de-escalate something when you start to feel it elevating?
So let's say you need to first de-escalate yourself. And what I teach is, and this is one of the first main themes of rule number 1 of Say It With Control, is let your breath be the first word that you say. Because what happens is, like when I said, if you yell at the time and you go, I don't yell, like you didn't take a breath before that, right? It's just like immediate out. And often when we're in sources of conflict, we hold our breath. We have really shallow breathing. We realize we're not breathing. So what happens? Our breath has to just explode like a volcano. And that's typically a yell. Mm-hmm. And whenever that fight or flight is triggered and you use your breath, it's like that effect of just a sigh. That feels a whole lot better. But when you can actually do that in a breath and take a breath before you respond, you sound like you're more in control. Like what would be the difference? Who sounds more in control to you if I said, that's not what I said. I don't yell all the time, versus that's not what I said. I don't yell all the time. And which one sounds more in control?
I mean, the second one.
The second one.
Yeah.
Yeah. The one who takes the breath, because whenever you add distance between what somebody says and when you respond, it allows you time to choose. Is this a person I want to spend time with? Is it worth it for me to even address it with this person? Is that really what I want to say? And it's has a double benefit. It helps you regulate your system to de-escalate, like you said, and it also de-escalates theirs. So taking 4 days before you want to respond, I think that's smart. If the time discussion calls for it, maybe it's, you're not ready for this conversation right now, but I can be ready this evening when I have time for it. Like problems happen when you push your time frame onto someone else, or someone else tries to push their time frame on you.
Is there a certain time that you should argue or you should have these crazy conversations that are uncomfortable? And are there better times than others?
Well, let's start with what's not a good time. Not a good time is when you're home, you finally get the kids down, it's late, it's after, let's say 8:30, you've both had a long day, and you now have 10% of yourself. Like, don't wait until you have 10% of yourself for 100% of a conversation. Do it in the daytime. Make time if you can. If you can't eat, like food just helps. Why? Because a lot of time you're chewing, and it adds time before you can say anything, or you take a sip. There is something about taking a sip of water actually before you say anything.
Not alcohol to fuel your
Not alcohol,
fire.
yeah. Not alcohol. That's not going to make it any better. But yeah, and if you can, do it outside. Big discussions are really good outside because it gives you a bigger perspective that life is still happening. What's happening between us, it's not the end of the world. Look at what's happening right now. The world's still spinning. What's happening is not the end of the world for us.
How can you be assertive without being considered aggressive?
Especially for women, a lot of time we get labeled aggressive or a bitch when you're just trying to be assertive, or you're trying to be taken serious.
Yeah, well, I know this is what I'm going to be careful on because I'm not a woman. But no doubt there is a discrepancy and a difference in that. What I like to say about being aggressive versus being assertive is your intent. Aggressive says, I don't care about respecting you. I'm just going to say it. I don't care about the respect. I don't care how it lands. There's no empathy for the receiver. Assertive says, I respect you and I also respect myself. And it's because of that respect, I'm going to tell it to you like this. So whenever you can say something, for example, like, I'm going to tell you this because. A lot of the time when you can add the because in it, you are telling someone why you are saying it. And instead of just focusing on the tone of this. Or here, I see this a lot that women tend to do is they don't use an assertive voice. And a voice that doesn't sound assertive is one that uses a lot of excessive apologies. Says, I'm sorry in every other sentence, or they will undercut their words. Like, I'm probably wrong about this, and you can correct me. And they're trying to be really, really hesitant, or they use the word just a lot. I just want to say, or I just have to say, that's very hesitant language because they're afraid to actually lean into the conversation. And so if you can use words that are more forward into the conversation, and a good technique for this is to actually, this is a good trick from my friend Chris Voss, who's an FBI negotiator. You've probably seen some of his stuff. It's fantastic. But people love to correct you in conversation. We love to correct somebody. So instead of saying, don't take this the wrong way, but it's guaranteed that they will take it the wrong way when you say it like that, because they will now do the opposite. Instead, say, this is probably going to, you're probably not going to like what I have to say. If you say that, like, you're probably not going to. So you apply that to the assertive, aggressive dynamic with, let's say, for a woman. If you say, instead of, don't take this as disrespect, or don't take this as me being aggressive, that's exactly what they're going to think. But instead, if you say, you're probably going to think this is coming on too strong, automatically they think, no, this is not coming on too strong. And so it's a great way to
disarming them.
Very, very effective way of disarming them. Like, you probably think I'm being too much right now. You probably think I'm being too sensitive. They will think the opposite. They will think you are not being that.
Fair point.
If someone feels constantly interrupted, whether at work or at home, what's a strong, respectful phrase to take that space back?
What I like to say for interruptions is this: number one, let them interrupt you the first time. That's very hard to do for a lot of people, but it's a good plan, because a lot of the time the person who's interrupting, it just means they weren't going to listen to you anyway. They were just thinking of what they had to say. It was so important to them, they had to get it out right at that moment. And also, there's some people who are neurodivergent. There are people with ADHD. There are people who have to get it out. That is how they communicate. So when you let them interrupt, it's giving them the benefit of the doubt that what they want to say is most important in that moment. Now, number two is, when they're done, you pick up exactly where you left off. Don't even address what they said. You're going to continue to go on with what you said. And if they interrupt again, what I like to say is number three, you say, I can't hear you when you interrupt me. I'm going to use their name. I say, Molly, I can't hear you when you interrupt me. And that's a better way of the reverse. Maybe you've been at lunch with somebody and you accidentally interrupt them. Like you don't mean to, but you interrupt them and they say, excuse me, I'm talking. What does everybody think? They go, oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, okay, I guess so-and-so thinks that they're just hot stuff.
Yeah.
And that's not going to go as well. So that's how to handle interruptions. Give them some grace, and then I can't hear you when you interrupt me.
And I'm just going to say this because we're listening to you and your tone is so
It's
even
I'm
and
like, God, I could
soothing.
listen to you all day long.
But it's interesting because I think
I
that
narrated
is
the
such
audiobook. Yeah.
that's such a really integral part, I think, of communication is you kind of have like a very smooth, even way of speaking, which also I think can kind of throw people, right? They're like, well, is he mad right now? Or is he just telling me like, and I think that's a really good tactic, right? Because sometimes people want a reaction from you.
Yes, there are people who, what I like to say, they're looking for a villain. Like they are looking for somebody they can blame their emotion on. I've had it before this was in the middle of a trial, and it was a friend of mine who I was against, and he came over and goes, man, I hate having cases with you. I said, why? He said, I can't ever get ugly with you because if I do, I look like the bad guy. He said, I can't ever make you the villain, really is what he said, because he likes to be able to blame that company, blame that other side and start throwing it all on them. And he couldn't do that because you just kind of kill them with kindness in a sense. But yeah, I think people in conversation, more than we realize, are looking for calm energy. It's attractive. It is security. It's comforting when there's someone that in the midst of all the chaos and all the emotion, you have someone that's firmly planted and not going anywhere. And you know they're not leaving you in the conversation. Those are the people that are going to be heard.
So what do you say when you have a conversation that didn't go well? And you walk away and you're like, ugh, that's not how I wanted it to go.
Well, that's okay. That happens a lot of the time. In fact, I would say that happens more often than not. You have an argument with somebody, there's friction, and then heat builds, and you say things that you don't mean. And then on the other side of it, when you say that hurtful thing, when it goes bad, the other side, you have this tone of almost regret, like, I wish I had didn't say that. You want to apologize. You might feel sad. Some people, after a really bad argument, they cry. It's a big emotional release for a lot of people. And what you want to do when things don't go well is that you use it as an opportunity to learn for the next one. That means you're going to begin the next conversation with two things that I think can help really anyone. And that is asking the question, what am I missing? So anytime that you feel like there's a snag in conversation, you're going to ask, what am I missing? They will tell you. Instead of you trying to push your point, have something to learn rather than something to prove. And that means you want to ask questions that are going to benefit the conversation. One of those is, what am I missing? The other is, I could have done better. That's a statement. I could have done better. And when you throw that out, I've never seen somebody go, yes, you could have. What they tend to do is say, I could have done better too.
Yeah.
I had that exact conversation happen.
Now, you have two young kids.
I do. 5
How
and
do you
7.
teach them? Because obviously young children argue.
Yeah.
And siblings specifically. We each have 3 kids. There's always arguments in our home.
Yeah.
How do you teach your kids how to communicate effectively? And like, what are some tips that you would share with our listeners?
Yeah. One would be, I very much encourage my kids to say their feelings, say what they're feeling out loud. So that means if my daughter, who's 5, says something to her brother, who's 7, that he does not like, he will say out loud, that makes me upset, rather than acting upset or acting out on that. And he's very quick to say, that makes me feel sad, or I feel sad at that. He voices those emotions. 2 is, we let them argue. It is a great training for letting them build that world for them, in a sense of they need to practice what it's like of what's good communication, what's bad communication. And so I will let them have their points, but if I hear it getting out of hand, I kind of come in and say, no. All right, you see how you said that? That's not going to be That's not going to be helpful. And I'll kind of frame that in a way of, all right, you state your point, and she says her point, and then he says her point. And then that's really what I'm trying to do, is get them to say the whole point of what they're trying to
And what
say.
happens when they come to you? Because this happens with my kids. Mommy, she said this, she did this, and I'm upset, and that person's crying, and all of a sudden you're the mediator.
Yeah.
What do you do in those situations?
I first say, well, let's ask them. It's the same way with like handling gossip in the workplace. Is if somebody gives you gossip, it's like, well, let me go ask them. And that typically
can we talk about that?
Yeah, let's talk about that. We need to talk about that.
Yeah, we definitely can. So anytime that somebody's bringing up gossip or drama to somebody and you really don't want to be a part of it, but yet you don't want to feel like you're not part of the clique or whatever, it's a very good practice to ask the question, have you asked them? Have you asked them? Have you mentioned it to them? Because no, they haven't. Of course not. And what they'll do is they'll tend to back off. They'll say something. Something like,
really smart.
Well, no, I haven't. But you can do that. Or two, you could say, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Like that's a very easy way of acknowledging what you're saying, but also I don't want to be part of it.
Yeah.
But as soon as you engage and say, oh, really? Is that what you heard? Oh my gosh, yeah. What did you hear? Like that's just feeding the fire. But a lot of the time, if you say, did you ask them? Or, well, let me ask them. They will quickly back off.
How do you set boundaries with people who don't take no?
Yeah, because no's a big thing. A lot of people have a trouble saying no.
Well, let's put it, you mean no in terms of somebody is asking you to do something you don't want to do?
Just boundaries, setting boundaries in general.
Okay.
You know, we're both from the South, so it's like you don't want to let someone down, or
gonna people please.
You don't want to hurt. I know. I'm getting better though. I am getting better.
Yeah.
I'm getting better.
Well, good. That's awesome.
Yeah. No, I am. Like if I really, I'm getting better. I will say it. You know, COVID helped me. I know it sounds weird, but during that time of like, you know, getting a little bit of the time back when everything kind of slowed down, and then when everybody went back to work and started, it helped me be able to say no.
Oh, that's awesome.
I know it sounds weird, but
no, it doesn't. It doesn't. If you want to, for anybody who wants to set a boundary, there's 3 parts to it. One
like
would be
3 parts to the boundary.
You know, I love the 3.
Okay.
One would be you need to say what you do not allow, you do not accept, or what you need. This is just this. You have to put the boundary out there. Maybe it's I don't allow people to talk to me that way, or maybe it's I don't answer calls after 5 p.m. or whatever it is. You are setting out what the boundary is. Where's the line going to be? Because that's what you have to communicate and know. 2 is you have to add the condition. If you continue to X, if you continue to speak to me that way, if you continue to call me after 5 p.m. or email me after 5 p.m. 3 is the consequence. This is the biggest one. You have to be able to follow through with it. The consequence can sound like, let's put it in terms of a boundary together. I don't allow people to speak to me that way. If you continue to speak to me this way, this is the end of the conversation. Like that's the consequence, the end of the conversation. I use that a lot. It's very effective because you're telling them, I'm giving you a choice. You can either follow my rules of what my manual is for how you're going to talk to me, or we won't talk. It's as simple as that. And what I find people do is they often give someone a remote control. Like they give you a TV remote. And if they press this button, you yell. You press this button, you get mad. And you get upset. And you want to justify and explain. And just press on all your buttons. You need to have this mindset with boundaries of giving someone a manual of, oh, you're going to say that to me? Okay, go to page 7 and you'll see down on paragraph 3. Yeah, I don't respond to that volume. Like that is the kind of thing that
Scarlett,
you...
I do not respond to that.
Exactly. Well, there's a difference in the you versus the I. So, and here's what I mean. Instead of me saying, you can't yell at me, you can't say that to me, I don't accept that. I don't respond to that volume.
Because it's not antagonistic. It's not, you're not
No,
attacking them.
I don't care what you do. I'm letting you know what I do.
Yeah.
I don't respond
I'm
to...
using
Yeah,
that, Scar.
Yeah, that's a good power. It's a power tactic.
yeah, I don't respond to that tone. So a lot of the
love
times
I
I
do
do.
not, because I was like, oh, you're getting the tude, you're getting the attitude.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not going to respond to that attitude.
Yeah, I don't respond to disrespect. So, I mean, I've done that I'll do that even with my kids. I mean, you get something as I don't respond to ugly comments.
Can you give us a real life example of what, like a powerful pause or like a way to get that point across, right? So what does that look like in practice?
So let's demonstrate what it sounds like to have real power in the conversation. Here's example A, where you don't have the power. Or if you were to say something to me or accuse me of something and I immediately said, no, that's not true. I mean, why would I even do that? You think that I would actually I don't even understand you right now. And you just explode.
Yeah.
All right. And you see how I said no, and then I just kept on talking. No, I mean, because why would I even, are you kidding me right now? I don't even know what planet you're on. Like whenever you attack. Versus, let's say example B, you say the same thing to me. And in response, I go, no, period. Like, that's it. You just said no.
And there's just air.
That's air. You said no.
No.
I'm going to use that.
And
that's
I'm going to win every argument from now on.
Every argument. Okay, no.
Well, it's simple, but it highlights this idea of whenever you say no, but.
Super right now.
Yeah, when you say no, but, or no, because. No, because I just feel like, and you talk. It's this, less is more. The more words it takes to tell the truth.
The guiltier you sound, too.
The more it sounds like a lie.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you were to ask me something and you're trying to get the truth out of it, and I feel like I'm talking in a circle and I'm all over the place, it doesn't sound like I'm telling you the truth. Like the truth doesn't need an excuse. So if you don't believe me after I said the truth, okay, knock yourself out.
Or can you just say, no, I respectfully disagree?
Or just no.
I would,
just no.
What I like to say anytime I need to disagree with something is I see things differently. Or I remember things differently.
Using that. I see things differently.
I see things differently.
We're going to take our notes out in our future arguments.
The reason why that works
Hold on, let me
is because
when
you say I see things differently, you are arguing their perspective. You're not arguing their point. Like most of the time, the point they're making is valid. It's reasonable. You just disagree with it. But when you say you see it differently, then it talks about where they're sitting. So if I say I take another approach, or I have a different perspective, or I remember things differently, I see things differently, there's nothing they can do with it.
Yeah.
So what I teach my clients is like the longer of an answer you give to someone, the more questions you're going to get. If you want to sound more confident, you should just say less.
A lot of couples, you hear, especially women, say you're the new word of gaslighting.
Right.
Right? How do we feel about that, Jefferson?
How do we feel about it?
Mm-hmm. It's like this new gaslight.
I still don't really know what it means. I'm going to be honest. I think it's like a trendy word.
All right. Well, I feel that the term is new. The product is the same. It's just same product, different package. People have been gaslighting for a long time. It's a manipulative technique, and we do it to other people too. It's very similar to lying, except I'm trying to make you question your whole truth. Like I'm making you question your sanity. If you've ever heard somebody say to you, "You're being insane right now. You're literally insane."
That's gaslighting?
It is a form of it. It can be. It is more about.
Mike is gaslighting.
So I think this is what I remember reading about it one time. Again, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a therapist. But if I remember correctly, the term came from this story of this guy who would turn on a gas light in their yard, and then he would turn it off, and his wife would later say the gas light was on. He'd say, no, it wasn't. It was just a control technique. And then later on, she'd say it was on, and he'd have it off. And she'd say it was on. He said, no, it's not. And so it was this way of like if got to where she couldn't trust her own memory. She couldn't trust what was real and what wasn't real. And she felt like she was starting to go crazy. Like if you just have this sense that this is happening and somebody goes, no, nothing's happening. You're insane right now. It's a form of lying, but they do it the intent is control to make you do something else. So let's say one of your husbands after a dinner says, you know what, I mean, you know that nobody likes you, right? They're only there because they like me, and I am just the one that's keeping it all calm. And all of a sudden there might be a hint that you think, well, maybe they really don't. Maybe I am the problem. Maybe they don't really like me. And then it's just a method to manipulate you and to control. A lot of people do it.
It's very manipulative.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's all about control.
The next conversation, Argue Less, Talk More, your book.
Yeah.
What, you talk about it in 2 phases. You talk about the ignition and the cooling phase. The ignition, explain it really quickly for me.
Yes. The ignition is the part of what you feel in an argument. When you say, I get worked up, I'm hot, I start to, like you said, you really want something getting out of this. It's because somebody said something to you that you didn't like. You took it the wrong way. And in fact, it rubbed you the wrong way. And then now there's friction. And that friction begins to build and there's heat. And now all of a sudden you're yelling. And then now you're calling them names. And now you're telling them to go forget themselves. Maybe you're telling them to whatever. And you are in this moment of fight or flight. And either you are wanting to fight them with your words. Like instead of throwing a rock, you're trying to throw a hurtful word. You're saying something to cut them. That's what you're wanting to do. Or you're wanting to flee. You want to flight out of it. And that's where you try to hang up the phone. Or you maybe want to leave the room. Like you said, when you slam a door. I mean, that's exactly what that is. But that's the ignition phase. The cooling phase is when you're on the other side of it and you start to regret. That's typically what it is. You go, God, I shouldn't have said that. Man, I really said something bad.
Sometimes I find myself, I'll say something I didn't really mean, but it just came out.
Oh, yeah.
And then it's like, you have to walk it back. And then and it's not often, it maybe like, my husband maybe once or twice a year, but like, I will say, I regret it. And I'm like, I don't even think that. Why did I say that?
Yeah. That's because your emotions were the one driving the car. That's your logical side wasn't in there. That's why having that breath is so good, because it's like breathing underwater. You never get emotionally flooded.
For anyone listening who's about to have a really tough conversation, what's one intention or mindset that they should walk in with?
Have something to learn, not something to prove. Because we so often want to prove our point. You need to understand who you're talking to. We have this kind of like, you need to understand what I'm saying. You need to accept what I'm saying. And that becomes corrosive in a way. Instead, you're wanting to ask the question, where is this coming from? And whenever somebody gets upset, instead of responding to the negative thing that they've said, or just because they started yelling at a 6, you're now going to start yelling at an 8 and ratcheting it up. Get really curious about where it's coming from. So help me here. Even if you started with that, I need you to help me. What am I missing? You can use, there's lots of different phrases we could talk about, but it's that mindset that's when you want to go into. Have something to learn, not something to prove.
Yeah, I like that. So if you're having a conversation, right? And someone says something you don't like, your instinct is to become defensive, especially, if you've been sort of misunderstood or your feelings are hurt. How can we check ourselves and respond as opposed to react?
A lot of it has to do with the breath. Yeah, and slowing yourself down. We want to react very quickly to things, and that typically works to our disadvantage instead of slowing it down. I mean, like when I talk right now, I typically talk slower. You
talk really slow. I really love it. And you're very even and you're very toned.
Well, thank you. But what it does for people who are not that way, it pulls them down. So maybe I am the one cross-examining a witness. And if I am trying to press them and push them and I'm talking really, really fast and I'm trying to get my point across, and didn't you see this? And isn't it true that they're just going to feel like they're in a corner? But if I slow it down, and then I make them feel warm, and you're naturally gonna pull their defenses down. So if you want to say, okay, how can I sound more confident? How can I get someone to not get as defensive? Slow your words down and lower your voice. Think of it as like a music. All right, if you put it on a channel that, I don't know, let's put on just some really fast-paced rap or something, and it's almost hard to hear what they're saying if you don't listen to a lot of rap, or it becomes harder to pay attention and harder to listen. The higher somebody
Well,
talks,
it just becomes noise.
it becomes noise. You got it.
Yeah.
But when you slow it down, it's like easy listening. Like it's, singer-songwriter. It's the kind of like slowing it down to where they're actually going to listen to you in a positive way. But when you want to keep someone from getting defensive, a great tool to use is begin with the phrase, I agree. Now, I'm not saying you agree with what they said. Instead of thinking micro, think macro. You're saying, I agree this is what we're talking about. I agree this is an important topic. I agree this is something that we need to discuss. Like that's all they're really looking for in that moment. That's it. Or something, you can tell them what's been helpful. You could say, that's helpful for me to know. Well, this is helpful now that you said that out loud.
And it is helpful. I think people are
yeah.
afraid of feedback. Like I always ask, even if we're ending something good or bad, like at the end of whatever, and I'm like, well, is there anything I could do better?
Yeah. Feedback is very important. Now, I will say there is a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. In my view, the right way to do it is you're detaching the personal from whatever you're talking about. So let's say they're turning in a proposal or something. If you say your proposal really is pretty confusing, they're going to take that very personally. Instead of your proposal, it's the proposal or the project or the presentation, whatever it is. You're separating it out from them. And instead of criticizing what they're saying, you add on to it. So use the compliment of, I really like this. And what would make it even better is if you added some of that. Or what would be cool to see is if you did this. Like when you're building onto whatever they have, rather than finding reasons to poke holes in it, it's going to be a whole lot better. And I find that even with, let's say you're at a boardroom full of people and you want to give your idea. There's this habit of people wanting to shoot down your idea, poke holes in it because it's not their idea. Mm-hmm. Like there's this fight of whose idea is going to be accepted and taken. And instead, a better trick is to say, look, I got 20% of an idea and I need y'all's help with the other 80%. Like then it becomes a collaborative effort. Yeah. Then they want to, now they're invested in trying to get to 100% rather than just getting mad because your idea wasn't theirs.
I see that a lot.
I bet, yeah, with all your business for sure. Mm-hmm.
We do a little rapid fire before we go. Uh-oh. Favorite one-liner for shutting down passive-aggressive comments. I hate passive-aggressive comments.
Should I read into that?
Biggest pet peeve in everyday communication?
One-upping.
What's your favorite quote or mantra?
You can't look back and hoe a straight row. Meaning like if you always got to look forward. Yeah.
Most used app on your phone?
Probably Instagram.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
What's a fear you've overcome?
Oof, I have a fear of heights. I still have not overcome that. I hate heights.
I hate heights.
They're the worst. They really are. I can take any animal, insect, snake, bug, whatever. You put me on a second story. Nah, I'm out.
Like my hands can start sweating.
I get nervous watching other people.
Oh no,
heights.
I can't.
I can't do it.
We ask every guest before they go, if you could give advice to your 10-year-old self, what would it be?
Oh, if I could give advice to my 10-year-old self, I would say don't carry at all. I think that's what I'd say. Don't carry at all. I on a time I was 10, my youngest brother was born. I'm the oldest of 4. And I just loved being the big brother. So when I was 16, I was driving them all to school. I was going through the youngest spelling words as we're going. I mean, help make lunches. It was just that became my thing. And in exchange, I think I missed a lot of childhood in a sense. Like I just was always the responsible one. So I would say don't carry it all.
I like that.
Firstborn, boo.
You are? Then you know. Yeah.
No, I'm not firstborn, but you are.
But
for sure.
That's
exactly what all firstborns go through. They feel like they have to carry it all.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, you're amazing.
Thank
Can
you
I
very
have
much.
your number during an argument?
Yes,
Okay.
anytime you just
I'm
speed
gonna
dial me.
like be right back. I'm gonna have this. I'm gonna have this pause.
Jefferson, have this conversation for me.
Exactly.
Here's where we are.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for the time that all of a sudden you have me on speaker and you're like, Jefferson, we're having this argument. I need you here. I need a witness.
Exactly. Everyone make sure and follow Jefferson on Instagram at Jefferson_Fisher, FISHER, or on TikTok at Just Ask Jefferson. Make sure and pick up a copy of his latest book. It just came out, The Next Conversation. I promise it is a life changer. Don't forget, rate, review us. We're now on YouTube, our full length video. Emese and I both have Substacks. Hers is called Tell Me More. We love this.
Yeah, I loved it too.
I'm
Thank you very
so
much.
Thank you so much.
It's so needed. And
I
we
think you
love
helped.
watching you. I agree.
Yeah, thank you. I'm honored.
It's communication is everything. And if we can
really
learn to
is.
do it well, and it'll make the world
Toolbox.
a better place.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, y'all.
Yeah.
Thank
you. We'll see you guys next week.
Thanks for listening to Lipstick on the Rim with Molly Sims and my ride or die, Emese Gormley. We are so excited to bring you guys along on this journey with us. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at Lipstick on the Rim and at Molly B. Sims. Or you can go to my blog where you can dive just a little bit deeper into my favorite products, trends, and more at mollysims.substack.com. And don't forget to check out our video episodes on my YouTube channel, Molly Sims. This podcast is a production with Sony Music. I wanted to give a special thanks to my team, Rosie Cummings, Kenna Ryan, Safin Kevorkian, and everyone at Sony Music. Don't forget to listen and follow wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss out on the fun.